Well, welcome again to another episode of Christian Answers. My name is Pastor Jeff Short, and today we're going to be talking about more ridiculousness from our culture. Part of this program is dedicated to just exposing the utter foolishness that we see in our culture every day. And today we're going to be talking about this list of letters that keeps expanding in the LGBTQAI, on and on and on. And we have a video clip from a cultural commentator. His name is Lionel. He is the lead presenter on a program called The Lionel Nation. He appears on network television. And I think he was a former lawyer, prosecutor, defense lawyer, and he knows his way around the law and the legal system, and he's very perceptive in cultural areas. He is not a believer, he's not a Christian, so you have to take some of what he says with a grain of salt, but other times he is very right on as far as his comments and his cultural commentary on topics. And so we're going to hear him in just a little bit, but before I do, I want to just explain and set up what it is that we're going to be listening to today. There is a growing list of letters that are appearing before the public. It seems like every year or two there is another letter added to the so-called sexual orientation rights group movement. And first of all, we got the LGBT. So that's been around for a while. It's ridiculous on the face of it because when you look at the letters L, lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transgenderism, you begin to look at those and you begin to see, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of sexual deviant behavior that's not listed in that list, LGBT. What about the polygamous groups in Utah? What about the bestiality clubs that you see on YouTube? What about all these other deviant, perverse sexual practices? And they're not listed. Well, there's a reason why they're not listed, and that is it's a marketing tool. It's a marketing tool. First of all, they get some basic categories of sexual perversion so that the public is used to that. They desensitize the public. Okay, we've heard this LGBT, okay. So they've worked on the L, the lesbian, and they worked on the gay, so that's now accepted by our secular society in the Western nations, in the United States. That's accepted, okay. People are okay with that. They tolerate that. They object to it at first, but then they get used to it because just as a frog, when he's boiled in a kettle, becomes desensitized to the rising of the heat. I don't know if you knew this, but if you drop a frog into boiling water on a stove, he will jump out immediately because it is hot. It's too hot for him to survive, and he knows that. But if you put a frog in a warm water on the stove, and then you slowly increase the temperature, the frog will remain in the jar, he will remain in the pot, even if it gets to the point of boiling. He will boil himself in that hot water because it never really did increase that much over what he was experiencing the minute before. So you can slowly boil a frog in a pot of hot water, boiling water, if you do it gradually. But if you do it all at once, he'll jump out. Oh, that's terrible. Well, that's the way the gay rights movement has done to the United States population. First of all, it starts out with the LG, and they start talking about lesbian and gay people and all of the terrible so-called persecution they go through, and all of this and that, and they keep talking about LG, lesbian and gay, lesbian, whatever order you put it in. And then people are comfortable with that. They're not maybe comfortable, but they tolerate that. They put up with that. Then the LGBT, they throw in a couple more, and people are not quite sure about this, but then they get used to it. And then the transgender at the end of the LGBT, they listen to Bruce Jenner. They like Bruce Jenner. They see him interviewed by Diane Sawyer. And then all of a sudden, this has become normalized in 2 or 3 or 4 years. And now what we're seeing is that this same movement is slowly but surely adding on extra letters to their rights. So now it's LGBTTTIQQAAPP. It's just on and on and on. And so we're going to see this cultural commentator, Lionel, don't know his last name, but he's a pretty sharp attorney. And he is going to explain the latest. This is for real. This is not a parody. This is not satire. This is for real. There is an organization in Canada, a teachers union, that has put this out in all honesty, in all sincerity. It's not satire. You would think it would be satire. You'd think it would be parody. You would think it would be a joke. You think it would be commentary, comedy, but it's not. It's reality. And there is an organization that has put this out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to watch this presentation by Lionel, and then I'm going to come back and add a few more comments. So let's go into this video presentation about the absurdity of the new additional letters added to the LGBT title. Let's watch that.
Here's the best one. You ready? Here's the next one. You're not LGBTQIA. You're LGGBDTTTIQQAAPP. Yes! I love this. When I read this, I ran to you to explain this one. Because this is going to be... This is just simply the greatest story ever. The Canadian Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, one of the best, has some super interesting new information for you. First, there's a new, they say it's an acronym. It's not an acronym. An acronym is SCUBA, radar, ATM, it's an initialism or something, but this is not an acronym. This is not a word. This is a series of initials. But it's LGGBDTTTIQQAAPP. And it works like this. L, lesbian. Got it. Though something tells me that's going to that's going to be, I think, shelved, mothballed pretty soon. I still like sapphic, but that's me. Gay, LG, gay. All right, I'm sure you know what that is. We have to get into that. LGG. What's G? What's the GG? Gay, genderqueer. I'm not making this up. You can see the story right here. Genderqueer. What's that? Okay, let me make sure we understand this. Genderqueer, denoting or relating to a person who does not subscribe to conventional gender distinctions, but identifies with neither. See? Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that clear that up? I think so. So let me see if I can do this again. Denoting or relating to a person who does not subscribe to conventional gender distinction but identifies with neither, both, or a combination of male and female genders. That's easy, right? This is a person who has no idea what he is, or she is, or it is, or whatever it is. Genderqueer, one more time. Denoting or relating to a person who does not subscribe to conventional gender distinctions but identifies with neither, both, or a combination. I didn't write this. Okay, so it's LGG. Lesbian, gay, genderqueer. B, bisexual. Got it? Doesn't bisexual indicate that you can choose either. So I guess we were born bisexual. I don't really know. Bisexual also for those who do not necessarily subscribe to any particular type of affinity one way or the other. They could take offense at this either way. But anyway, so we got it. LGGB. Work on this, right? Remember this. There'll be a test. Lesbian, gay, genderqueer, bisexual. LGGB. Now we continue. D. Demisexual. Not Demi Moore. Not Demitas. Not demigod. Demisexual. No. Demisexual. Okay. It means this. A demisexual is a person who does not experience sexual attraction unless they form a strong emotional connection with someone. This used to be known as monogamous love, but now they threw out the sexual and call it demisexual. Okay? Demisexual. Don't worry about the phone. It doesn't matter. I'll get it later. Okay, now, demisexual. I think this is good. I think this sounds like monogamous. I think this sounds what I think we should be. Let me try this again. A person who does not experience sexual attraction unless they form a strong emotional connection with someone. Isn't that laudatory? Call people refer to yourself as demisexual and cisgendered at that. Okay, so we got it? So let me try it again. LGGBD. LGGBD. Now next one, transgender. I think we got that one. Girls or boys who dress up like the opposite sex, who want everybody to notice, whatever. Don't forget also, cisgender is true. Remember, for those of you who ever took organic chemistry, cis trans isomers, cis isomers, trans isomers, cis is basically who you are based upon what they tell you are and based upon what your birth certificate says you are, which is kind of what you are. It's kind of like demisexual, but as to gender. Okay, transgender. Transsexual. Transsexual is kind of the same as transgender, only they've gone through irreversible surgery to remove healthy body parts because of feelings, okay? Transsexual versus transgender. Big distinction. Transgender pre-op, transsexual post-op. Apparently according to this. Okay? So you got it so far? So it's LGGBDTT. There's another T in here. Two-spirit. Hear that, honey? Two-spirit. TWO-spirit. Sounds like something from the Arapaho or the Pawnee or something. The Cherokee. Two-spirit. A Tukwa. Chichinwakawa. Notice how all Indian, Native Americans sound like that in all Western movies. Okay. Two-spirit. It's another category no one on Earth has ever heard of. But apparently this is, in Canada, it's a big deal. This one is complicated. Okay. But you have to be, I guess, a Native American. And smoking a lot of peyote, I read, could only help to understand this. It appears to be a third gender. A third gender not yet discovered by science and only found in the Native American community by gender studies majors who take vacations and hang out in sweat lodges. Two-spirit. Do you have that? Do you follow what I'm saying? Two-spirit. This is fantastic. So let's go back again. So it's LGGBDTTT. LG, there's going to be a test on this. LGGBDTTT. Now, I is intersex. Intersex, this is a very rare condition that most used to be called hermaphrodite. Remember pseudohermaphrodism? Or as I learned in Florida, it's called a morphodite. And morphodite could be kind of anything you want. But an intersex means a child is born with both sex organs of male and female. It is very rare, as in it hardly ever happens. It is really a birth defect, if anything else. It's rare. And you know, years ago, there used to be a problem sometimes when babies were born with engorged sexual organs, especially young gals. They would get a clitoridectomy or clitoridectomy, and there's a kind of a famous story about that, which we won't get into. But okay, so that's intersex. Queer. Hey, Hey, old school. Just when you thought you couldn't use the word queer because it's an insult, well, think again, Sparky. Now it's back in spades. Queer is an umbrella term designed to describe all people who aren't normies, who aren't normal, who aren't, well, whatever that means. Can't even say normal. It's hard to say exactly what this is, but queer is okay. Okay? Queer. Questioning. The next Q. Questioning. This is a term used by people who are deciding where they are going to fall on this list. I like this. It's like in politics. What are you? Well, I'm an independent. Or I'm whatever it is. Are you an independent? No. Are you a Democrat? No. But I'm questioning. I'm not really sure. I'm in the process of interrogating myself. Not really sure. Thinking about this. And believe me, these distinctions will inspire more questioning. Okay. Questioning is a term of people who are still deciding what the hell they are, where they fall on the spectrum, where they fall on the list. It's somewhat contradictory to the, quote, born that way theory. If you think about this, it was very interesting. This is to have a group of people still questioning their sexuality. But the LGBTQWTF brigade suggests it's okay, but we don't know. So you're questioning. I like that. Questioning demisexual, cisgendered, okay. Asexual, simple, Ed Koch. I kid, of course. People who have no interest in sex. Now that's a different story. Not being interested in sex versus no interest in the subject of genetic or gender taxonomy, sexual taxonomy, whatever. I guess. I don't know. Not sure. Asexual. Allies. Okay? Allies. Let me go back to the list. It's LGGBDTTTTIQQAAPP. Asexual allies. Allies are, this is also important to note, these are people who virtue signal constantly on Twitter, this is according to this great piece, about supporting their LGBTQWTF friends and family. These people aren't gay, queer, or even questioning. They're simply shielding themselves from the Gestapo or Gestapo squads and legions of people who are even questioning. They're simply shielding themselves from these crowds who come around looking for people who aren't properly broadcasting their approval of the queer agenda. So be an ally, children. I guess they suggest if you know is good for you. So it's somebody who basically just supports. They're just. We have a friend of ours who actually says, I'm Afro-sympathetic. Swear to God, true story, straight face. I'm Afro-sympathetic. What the hell does that mean? Well, I kind of know what black people. But no, you don't. Yes, I do. I'm sentient. I'm empathic. Okay. Don't want to confuse this. So allies, you got what allies are? Allies are just people who are virtue signalers, I guess, and virtue signalers are great, in case you don't know this. These are not to be confused with social justice warriors, SJWs. Virtue signalers are those who strain themselves from patting themselves on the back, constantly referring to themselves about how great they are. Okay, next. Pansexual. Pansexual is a little bit more of a confusing way to be bisexual. There really is no difference, only that people pretend they can use a word that reminds them of perhaps maybe Greek mythology, and it sounds more interesting than bisexual. That pansexual, pantheistic, pan-curonium bromide, which I think is one of the cocktail elements of the lethal injection. I have no idea. So, and polyamorous, the last one. Polyamorous, not to be confused with polyamory or Cleveland Amory or Maury Amsterdam. Polyamorous means basically these are leftover, they suggest maybe hippies, people who miss communes, hardcore Mormons, either way, people who who enjoy more than one partner, and basically that may indeed be the subject of criminal case if it falls into bigamy. So there you have it, folks. LGGBDTTTIQQAAPP. There will be a test. Commit this to memory. You'll be the hippest person in your group, especially if you're on the Upper West Side. And I like demisexual. I'm a demisexual, cisgendered male, if you can even say male.
Well, as you can see, this presentation, you don't know whether to say, wait a minute, this is really serious, or whether you want to just laugh, because it's either comedy or it's tragedy. If it's comedy, then of course we need to laugh about it and just do nothing about it because it's comedy. Of course, you don't get mad at comedy. You don't go out and say we have to resist this in comedy. Comedy is to make you laugh. Comedy is just to give you a diversion, to give you some kind of an entertaining value. But the problem with looking at this as comedy is that there are people that are more and more increasingly taking this seriously. They're actually believing that these categories are serious categories. Are you kidding me? There are people who seriously will look you right in the eye and say, no, we have to have two-spirit, quote, two-spirit rights in this country. There are people that are categorize themselves as two-spirited or three-spirited or whatever. And so you have to scratch your head and you go, I'm not quite sure how to react to this. I'm not quite sure how to deal with this ridiculousness. I think in the Bible, it says in Proverbs, a little bit of a confusion here in Proverbs. It says, don't answer a fool according to his folly. So in one sense, you don't want to answer a fool according to his folly. You don't want to take this seriously. You don't want to get into refutation of this because that's taking the whole thing too seriously. The Bible says, be careful to not answer a fool according to his folly, or you'll be drawn into that foolishness. In other words, when something is just so stupid and insane and foolish, to actually be drawn into that conversation, to that foolishness, actually lowers yourself to the point where now you're playing the fool because you're actually entering into a foolish conversation. So the Bible warns us about that. But then the next statement in Proverbs, it actually says, answer a fool according to his folly, or else he'll be wise in his own eyes. In other words, there is a point where you have to decide, okay, is this worth refuting? Because if I don't refute this, that person or those people will walk away thinking, okay, well, we must have had such a strong argument that this person cannot even answer it. So we win. We are victorious in our presentation because the other person cannot even answer our presentation. And so you don't want that to happen. You don't want to neglect to give an answer because you're afraid that you'll be entering into foolishness, and the result would be that the other person gives the impression of having the stronger argument. So the Bible actually asks us to discern when and where and under what circumstances do we answer a fool. And so obviously today, by giving this presentation and by hearing and seeing this video clip, we are trying to answer the fool. And we're trying to do it because this stuff actually has traction in our society. This stuff actually convinces millennials. This stuff actually impresses and wins over millions of people. When you just keep adding letters to this LGBT rights movement, and it's absurd, it's foolishness. Yes, but people are actually following after this foolishness. And so we have to give an answer to it. And the answer is, once you open the perversity box, the perversity Pandora's box, there's no putting it back in the box. And we have already opened the perversity box in our country. We have legalized so-called gay marriage. That is opening the perversity box. Now, every deviant, sexual pervert is coming out of the woodwork, and they want their specific perverted practices given legal status. And so you're going to see not only this list of letters added on to the basic pervert definition, LGBT. You're not even going to see this list that we just heard mocked and joked about. That's not the end of it. There are going to be more than that, because every time you open this kind of can of worms, you're going to get all kinds of worms crawling out of the can. And we're going to see over the next decades or so, the list expand to probably hundreds of letters to represent some fine point, some detailed, perverse type of practice. That's why, as Christians, we need to continue to not allow our culture to desensitize us. We need to begin to back up and go, wait a minute, let's go back to the main four, LGBT. All of these are wrong. All of these are perverse. All of these are sick. All of these are twisted. Why? Because the Bible, God's Word, says they are. And all you have to do is go back to the Word of God. All you have to go back to the good, truthful, sane, wholesome, godly, spiritual teachings of the Christian faith as found in the Bible. And you are going to find that all of these additional letters, not only those are wrong, but the initial four, the LGBT, that was wrong to begin with. And we shouldn't be giving rights to sinful practices. We shouldn't be giving rights to perversity. And that's where we started off on the wrong foundation. And now we're going to see what's happening. Down the road, you will see polygamy, 3 women, 4 women, 5 women, 6 women, who knows. It's unlimited, open-ended, marrying a man. And it's going to be legal. Mark my words, it's going to be legal. There's no logical reason why it should not be legal. Or you're going to see one woman marry 5 men, or one woman marry 10 men. You're going to see group marriages, 5 men and 5 women all married under the same roof, or maybe not even under the same roof. You're going to see all kinds of perversity. You're going to see all kinds of sick and twisted practices, and they're going to be elevated to the status of rights, of basic human rights. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be absurd. It's going to be foolishness. And we're going to see this happen because there's no going back unless, by the grace of God, there's some spiritual, moral revival that comes into our culture. But we are in a frightening age. We are in a strange age. It's almost as if an invasion came through our culture, and a silent invasion, a secret invasion, and conquered our land. So we live in a different land than we did just a couple decades ago. And as Christians, we need to never, ever adjust to that. We need to resist. We need to object. We need to be prophetic voices in a perverted world, and we need to say, turn back to God. Just like Jesus said when he came preaching his first words, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And we need to do that and never stop doing that. Well, I hope that's been a warning and a wake-up call for you to stay strong, stay vigilant. I'll see you back next week on another edition of Christ and Culture, the Christian Answers. God bless.